power of word of mouth is really strong. If you have a unique product that people actually use and find it appealing, people will talk to other people. The fact is, if you are a leader, even a very small niche, and people will find you, and then that's how we started to grow the user base, and we leveraged that to keep on expanding into different areas.
Welcome to the Product Market Fit Show, brought to you by Mistral, a seed stage firm based in Canada. I'm Pablo. I'm a founder turned VC. My goal is to help early stage founders like you find product market fit. Today we have Allen, the co-founder and CEO of Wattpad, a social storytelling platform. On Wattpad, you can read and write your own stories or comment on existing ones. Some stories even get picked up and later published or produced into movies. Wattpad is a community of over 90 million readers and was recently acquired for $600 million. Allen, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
So the topic of today's episode is how to launch a consumer to consumer marketplace. And, we're going back to the beginning here. I mean, Wattpad is being a long journey. You guys started in kind of 2006, 2007. And so just to set context, I mean, mobile, if I understand, was already a hot area back then, but most people were on flip phones, on Blackberries. And in that era, you had this idea for Wattpad, for a community of readers and writers. What was the first idea of what the product would be? Was it a website? Was it an app? Because I have to be honest, I mean, reading on a flip phone was not fun, right? And so what was the thesis and where was the emphasis when you thought about the MVP?
Yeah. At that time, of course, the flip phone was very, very primitive compared to today's standard. But at that time, people have been texting, people have been using the phone for more than just the voice function. So both co-founders believe that the phone capability will continue to go up. It wasn't quite ready for prime time, but good enough for us to launch the company. At the same time, it was in 2006, YouTube was 1 year old, Facebook was 2 years old, and they have maybe over 10 or 20 million monthly users around that time. You can start to see social network or building a community or user-generated content, a few concepts that we incorporated into Wattpad starting to take off. So we kind of leverage that user behavior and the market, the foundation for us to build upon.
Those trends that you mentioned around user-generated content and social networking and communities, very well understood today. Back then, they were super nascent. What did you understand it, or was it like now looking back, you understand that you rode those trends, but at that time, were you aware that okay, these are exciting trends and we're going to kind of piggyback on top of them, or was it just more of a coincidence how it worked out?
Yeah, I think it's. At that time, we saw the early trends, and the trend cannot be mistaken. Every day goes by, Facebook and YouTube is getting bigger and bigger. So it was a real thing. That's for sure. How it turned out, nobody knows. Nobody understood UGC fully at that time. But we saw the big opportunity. We saw this is it was gonna be the Web 2.0. It was very nascent at that time, and we saw that trend, and we believe that that would be very, very disruptive to how people consume and create content.
Perfect. So then moving forward from there, you have this idea. You're going to go mobile. What does it even mean to launch on mobile back then? Like what are you building? Obviously it sounds like an app on the on the App Store or Play Store. So what did it look like back then?
There was no App Store. There was no Play Store. When we launched, the iPhone did not even exist or did not even announce. So the first app that we built was on the flip phone. And to download the app on the flip phone, you have to go through like hurdles after hurdles. You probably need to download a driver somewhere on the internet, Wi-Fi cable, because no one had like mobile data at that time. So this is something we also expected to become more ubiquitous, because we started to see mobile plans. They were expensive at that time, but we expect the price would go down and it would become ubiquitous, whether it's mobile data or Wi-Fi even. I think our prediction was quite spot on. The mobile device capability and the ubiquitous nature of mobile data, including Wi-Fi, became reality a few years after we launched.
So that's a great point. And just to be clear, like day zero, you launch this app, you have this website, tells you how to download it. Is that the strategy? Okay, we're going to leverage SEO and classic books, and when people search, will come up first, or did that just kind of happen? Like, what was the strategy when it comes to discovery, right? Top of the funnel, how are people going to find out about Wattpad?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it wasn't, the SEO strategy wasn't intentional at that time. It just, what's intentional was the classic book strategy. We imported that on day one, but how we get it discovered, it was a big problem. And discovery on mobile was even worse. So, we tried different experiments and it turned out, SEO at that time, was the right strategy to help us.
What were some of the experiments? I'm curious.
Mobile advertising wasn't available. Google did not have mobile ads. That's how early it was. So, even if we had the budget, we didn't, to be honest, we were bootstrapping at that time, but even if we had the budget, we cannot spend our way to bootstrap the user base. So, generating awareness was the biggest, issue. So, it maybe sound very not scalable, but when companies very, very early do things that are not scalable, actually it's not a bad idea, because you're not at the time that you should scale anyway. So we contacted bloggers, for example. So and some people are interested in writing about this because it's a very unique product on the market. Reading classic books on your flip phone apparently wasn't readily available. So there are people who would like to blog about this, and slowly we gain traction. It's not like we can press a button or write a blog post or ask someone to write a blog post that we can gain 100,000 people all at once. More like 50 or 100, but power of word of mouth is really strong. You know, if you have a unique product that people actually use and find it appealing, people will talk to other people.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, and to be clear, I mean, that you couldn't really, there probably wasn't too big of an audience to advertise on Facebook. You can't advertise on Google because it's not on mobile yet. You can't pay to be number one in the App Store. I mean, a lot of traditional things that are done today were just not an option. So that limited the set of kind of possibilities.
Yeah.
And I do have to say, one of the questions I have, because what you're mentioning there is being really, really unique, right? And that is a kind of high level theme, which is if you have an offering that's extremely good for a really small set of people, you might think that that's a weakness because it's such a small market and so on. But the strength is it makes everything else so clear, right? Like marketing becomes clear, your branding, your positioning, who you have to go after, all that becomes super clear because it's so targeted. Was that like, when I think about reading on mobile and you and your co-founders, was that something that you knew you wanted to do? You wanted to read classical books on mobile, and so that's where you started? Or was it just you knew you wanted, to read on mobile, and classical books happened to be the only thing you could import at the time?
Yeah, I think a classic book was a tactic to support our strategy rather than the strategy itself. It's like launching a rocket ship. After 60 seconds, the bottom half of the rocket ship is thrown away, right? Because it helps you launch, but after 60 seconds, it's no longer useful. So for us, our vision was very, very clear early on. We were not interested in building just a reading app on mobile for classic books. We wanted to build the largest platform for people to read and also write and share the writings freely. The UGC idea that that we talked about early on, the problem is to overcome that chicken and egg problem. We had to leverage something else for a period of time, and that was the classic book idea. And I think for many founders, I think the TAM or total addressable market, if it's very small early on, if you can provide a unique and excellent solution to solve that problem, it's okay. However, that cannot go on forever. For a company to be venture scale, eventually your roadmap, your vision has to be big enough for a VC to invest in. I think if the idea was a mobile reading app for classic book, it's a good, perhaps, lifestyle business, allow me to say, but it would never be venture scale. And that was never the intention.
First question, are you still bootstrapped at this point? And related is this free? Are you generating any income at this point?
No. The UGC idea only started to take off 2 years after we started. And when we launched the classic book on day one, in the first year, or even after 2 years, we had maybe 1,000 users. It's all free. So in a way, it sounds great, but in fact, it's not when you think about this. For a free product, when you only have 1,000 users after a year, it's not something that you should celebrate. It means you don't really have a real product market fits.
Correct.
But the 1,000 users gave us a lot of insights of what was working, what's not working. And of course it gave us the audience as well. So, another way to put it, we figure out the atomic unit, for our product, which is a story. And then we seeded the supply side, which is the classic books. And then we leverage the small supply to start scaling the demand, which is the readers. And once we have the readers, no matter how small, it becomes attractive to the writers to share. So 2 years after we started, we finally saw the first upload to our platform. It took 2 full years,
wow,
even though the upload button has always been there. And at that point, we were still bootstrapping because, the traction was not enough to attract even seed investor at that time, and remember it was like 15 years ago or 12 years ago, 13 years ago at that time. No one would fund you if your product has no traction.
And in those 2 years, what was the focus? Was it, we only have 1,000 readers, we need to somehow drive, the number of readers on here? Was it around just learning and insights and talking to your readers and kind of combining the data with these qualitative interviews? Was it around getting uploads? Like, what was the focus during those 2 initial years before this first upload and leading up to it?
Before the first upload, I have to say it was quite depressing because there was no traction and there's no easy way to get out of that hum. So we thought about giving up, to be frank. But one of us, when we decided what we wanted to do in the next step, one of the options was to pull the plug. But I can't remember which co-founders said this. Hey, our advertising dollars, we had some banner ads on our website, and we generate $2 in a month from Google. I wish I kept that check. It would be a good thing to post in the background. But the point is, because of the usage was so low, our hosting cost was only $5. And one of us said, well, we have so much conviction in this idea. We are $3 away from break even. Let's continue.
It makes a lot of sense when you think about network effects and you think about being pre-product market fit, that money can do as much harm as good, especially if it's short, if it creates a runway, right? Like when you're in this bootstrap mode, you kind of don't have, I mean, your runway is really just more on the, your mental energy and desire, right? It's not a real like runway in the sense that at some point you're bankrupt. When you raise money and you start hiring people, all of a sudden you've got payroll and there's a real runway, and that kind of changes the dynamics, changes the focus, and all of a sudden growth becomes important. And if growth becomes important earlier than market fit, than product market fit, it can be dangerous.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think for C-stage company, the biggest risk, of course, having capital is good, but the biggest risk is actually premature scaling. When you have capital and when you don't have product market fit yet, and you force yourself to scale, you would do artificial things to scale the demand or the supply of both, or worse, both, while the product actually it's not solving a real problem, then the problem becomes the company itself,
That's right. So let's go back to that first upload. The question I have is, did that just happen? Like, were you doing anything in order to try to get people to upload, or did one day you kind of went through your day and all of a sudden you saw, oh wow, like there's an upload in there?
It's in a way it's kind of happened automagically, but and at the same time we've been talking to bloggers, we have been talking to people on the internet, so the word of mouth effect has been going on, mostly on the demand side, less so on the supply side. To be frank, we said many writers, sometimes we ping writers directly, hey, we have a new product, people can read your creative writing on mobile. Would you be interested in uploading? And many people said no, because there's no incentives, right? There's no readers. But over time, all it takes is one. The hardest is the first one, but once you get the first one, and if the first one has a good experience, and at that time, that writer had maybe 100 readers, and some of them are commenting, encouraging her to continue to upload the next chapter, and so on and so forth. And that was a pretty good experience. And some of the readers ping other writers, and that's how we get the multiplier effect over time.
So how did you, maybe talk to that a bit more. Like, so you have this one, this first, the kind of 0 to 1, I agree, is the hardest. And so this one person starts to write, they have a good experience, they're writing more, but how did you translate that 1 to, 10 or some kind of more meaningful number of writers?
Yeah, this is, one thing that we in retrospect, we didn't fully understand at that time, but that's where the founder involvement in the marketplace became so important. We were very actively involved. We were monitoring and we were engaging in the conversation. We were asking the writers, what's working, what's not working for you and for the readers as well. And also observing how they engage. And we realized, they actually talk a lot, the readers would comment, oh, I really like this, I really like that, wish you could upload the next chapter very soon. And that became the encouragement. That becomes a self-reinforcing feedback loop, positive feedback loop to the writer, right? So, we take that, feedback and kind of improve the product that way. Easier to comment, encourage people to comment. After reading, we make sure at the end of the chapter, we have a big comment box to encourage the readers to say something positive. Make sure we say something constructive as well. So all those little things add up to help get the flywheel fly faster and faster. But I have to say, without if we just sit on the sideline and wait for it to happen, it won't happen. We have to be very actively involved.
How much of growing a successful marketplace is really about identifying the flywheels and just lubricating them, right? And just removing friction for them to speed up and go faster and faster.
It's a big part of it. At the same time, all the steps that I talk about, they have to happen in sequence. You have to identify what really is your atomic unit first. In our case, it's a story, but in some other marketplaces, it might not be that obvious. So using Uber as an example, you would think it's a ride, but if you consider Uber Eats as well, it's not really a ride. It's a point A to point B. It's not a ride of a person. So once you discover that atomic unit, then the second step is to scale the supply side. You cannot scale the demand first, because when there's no supply, there's absolutely will be zero retention on your demand. That's why you have to scale the supply first, and supply can wait for the demand, but not the other way around. So and then you scale the demand, and then you enable the engagement. This is the comments. This is the reading time that I talk about, and then finally, the last step is based on the engagement, you collect a lot of data. Many of the information or data that you collect is proprietary to your marketplace, and that becomes unique to you. And over time, as you accumulate more data, that also creates the data network effect for you to scale and make the product very defensible. This is what I call the asset framework: atomic unit, scale the supply, scale the demand, and then the engagement, and then track the proprietary data. This is what I call the asset framework that you can find on Too Small Fish VC websites. That's based on our experience in Wattpad, but what we've found is it's very generic, that can be used in pretty much all the marketplaces in the early stage.
What I have to ask now is, at some point in the early story, you had so little traction that, as you said, you almost quit. When did you go 180 on that? Like, at some point, you had readers, then you had one upload, you had 10 uploads, and you started to see word of mouth and flywheel effects take off. When did you and your team say, okay, we are onto something? Like, this is something real?
Yeah, I think it came maybe half a year after we saw the first upload. Remember, it took 2 years to see the first upload. But then the second upload came much faster. It's like in 2 more weeks, the second writer joined the platform, and both had very good experience. They took the readers and writers told other people, and then the third came, in a week or something, right? It multiplies and grow exponentially. In the early stage exponential, don't get me wrong, we start to see the traction. And I think it might be half a year after we saw the first upload. At that time, there was one activity that I really like. I talk about founder involvement early on, and this is one thing I always do in the evening, was to go through the social graph, look at who this person is following, or who the following follower relationship, and kind of walk around the network and see if there are any new writers that I might have missed. And it was a small town in a way, everyone. But there was one evening that I start to realize I keep on clicking, and it's endless. I keep on bumping into new people. That was a very, very clear indication to me that we are onto something.
Awesome. All right. Well, Alan, we'll stop it there. I think this was an amazing story about how a marketplace that now has about 100 million users in its community started off, right? We're talking about 2006, very early in the mobile era, pre-iPhone, and really going through the details of starting off with single player mode, finding a way to build a very unique value proposition for a very specific set of users, leveraging that to build word of mouth in a small community, and then playing the waiting game, right? Which I think is really important, and just the ability to have a long runway in this pre-market fit part of the, I'm not even going to call it a business, right? More of a project, an experiment, and not having to rush and scaling ahead of product market fit. And so you allowed that to happen organically. The user generated content piece of the puzzle started to work. And then once those flywheels were spinning, really just finding ways to accelerate them and not worrying about monetization until much, much later. And then ultimately to an extremely successful acquisition. And that's not the end of Wattpad. Wattpad continues to grow and will continue to grow for many, many years. So thanks a lot, Alan, for sharing that story with us.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for listening all the way through. It's been a pleasure having you here. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.